We're on page 130, 141. Sorry, 141. And we're learning here about the difference between Amalek and the other nations. The other nations can have correction. Amalek cannot, and therefore the Torah instructs us to destroy them completely. And the Rebbe then seeks to actualize it in our lives, and he talks about desires, indulgences that are justified intellectually. That this is something that we need to realize, that it's a ploy of the Yetzer Hara, or it's a ploy of the Nefesh Abamis. And therefore, he spoke about a very interesting, I think, nunakuda for us in our learning, that there's something called the Toiv of the Nefesh Habamis. It's good. It's not something bad, but nevertheless, since it has a definition, and it has a definition that's bereft of godliness, it's not where you want to be. And with this, we explained yesterday the ideology of Chabad Hasidism, that a taiva, when we talk about a craving, an indulgence, isn't only for things that are forbidden, but also for things that are permissible. And if you recall the saying that we shared several times, I believe it's also mentioned in Hayom Yom, and this is the way the saying goes, pretty much. Was is osser, or better said, was man tornit, tormenit. It's Yiddish meaning what you're not allowed, you're not allowed. Was man mag, and what you are allowed, darf man nit, you don't need. Chabad Hasidim for ages were living and looking to fulfill this dictum. And mind you, this is a very hard avodah. This is not easy. This is not small change. You could simplify it to basic cravings of the human being, where we want to feel good. And the question is always asked, what's so wrong if you want to feel good? I don't want to do evil. What is so bad? And if you really learn Chabad Chassidus, and you're open enough to look at it one-on-one, face-to-face, and you're ready to hear it, because a lot of people are not. They like some like the mysticism of Chabad Chassidus, some like these type of Maamarim, which is psychological. But the part that really smacks you in the face, it's very uncomfortable, and you just don't want to deal with it. But as Frum Yidden and Torah Yidden and Hasidim, the intelligent way is to take it all on. I always say when people have complaints about this or that, this movement, this thing, this, that, what do I say? There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you're only willing to accept the good and the bad, but not the ugly, then you're not in the club. You're outside of the club. Every group and every movement and life is good, bad, and ugly. You don't have to be ugly. You shouldn't be ugly. You shouldn't be bad. But this is the world we live in. In the language of Chazal, Tov Ra. Since Adam, Chava, with the Eitz Hadas, everything is mixed together. It's a mixture. Or in Hebrew, it's a balagan. Yes, Moshe.
Rabbi Dalvin, can you give us an example? Can you give an example?
I'm looking at your face, and your smile is so demonstrative that you're eating this up. This is like,
I live it every day.
You live it. I was gonna say you live it every day. So why do you need examples from Rabbi Dalvin? You live it every day.
You're right.
What should I say? We all, and every one of us, we're surrounded. We do good, bad, and ugly. Sometimes we're the best. Sometimes we're really ugly. When you're mean to your spouse or to your kids or to your friends or to your whatever, you're ugly. And sometimes you're not ugly, but you're just not on the right track. So, examples, every moment of life is an example. Every one of us has their situation. But the point I want to get to, Moshe, is not that to not understand that and to not accept that is shallow. You're not a man. You're not in the real world. You're living elsewhere. So of course there's issues. And I'll tell you something. Many people brought this issue to the Rebbe. And in a way, he disregarded it. And I told you, he wrote letters to my wife's grandfather and others who were real Hasidim and real Yidden. And I'm telling you, the real McCoy. Nevertheless, there was an issue in the community, and you're talking about examples, Moshe. My wife's Zayda Reb Zalman was like the leader of Chabad in Australia, and he was dealing with all kinds of community issues. He wasn't the official rabbi that Rabbi Groner was, but he was the head of the moisters, the institutions. And there were real issues. And when he wrote to the Rebbe, he was a very intelligent chassid. He was 2 years younger than the Rebbe. He came from the same ilk. You know what I'm saying? And he was calm and collective and smart and thoughtful, And yet you find in the letters, in the Igros Kodesh, it's printed black and white. The Rebbe says, kind of throw away your Marash Chayda. Marash Chayda means your negativity, your being down. But Rebbe, I'm discussing with you a serious issue that we have in the community. That's fine. But when it comes to what the Rebbe felt, and that's between him and the Rebbe, what the Rebbe perceived as a negative, throw it away. Now you have to ask yourself a question. Reb Zalman was a smart man. The Rebbe was answering a chassid, a Jew who wrote to him to do his business. He was working for the Rebbe, for Chabad. So isn't this the time to deal with these issues? The answer is yes, but I think what he was saying to him, realize, Reb Zalman, you're not going to fix everything. And there's good, bad, and ugly. And you got to accept it and find a way how to mitigate it and go on. And that's my solution. My advice to you, Moshe, is, and I'm sure you do it, is you have to know how to mitigate. There were people, Velvel, who came into the Rebbe and brought tainus. They had tainus. In Hebrew, we have the word tainus, complaints. The Rebbe sometimes wouldn't answer them. He would hear them, look at them, and just go on to the next thing. You don't have to always answer, because either you don't have an answer, or you don't want to answer, or you don't want to be critical because you feel the person at that time is not ready to hear it. So just go on. The person will walk out and say, "Wait a minute, I asked you a question, a direct question. You didn't give me an answer. But I respect you." So maybe that's the way to get the person to realize, hey, enough with the complaints and go on. So why am I saying this? How's it relevant to the Maamar here with Amalek and all this? Because when you learn Chassidus, you have to be willing ultimately to face everything that Chassidus offers to really to become a Chassid. If you want to be a Chassid, that's the difference, by the way, between just learning Chassidus, as thousands of people learn Chassidus, Chabad Chassidus, and they don't become Chabad Chassidim, they don't have to. So what's the difference between Rabbi Moshe Weinberger's Talmidim or Rabbi Michal Twersky's Talmidim learning Chassidus and my friends and I learning Chassidus in yeshiva is a major difference. Or Yonason who learned in yeshiva, Chabad yeshiva. The difference is whether you fully embrace the system completely with the good, bad, and ugly. And many people are not ready to do that, and I respect them. And as a famous Chassid Rabbi Avraham Mayor said once in Lakewood, at a Farbrengen with 200 people, he said to everybody, "My dear friends, I didn't come here tonight to make you and encourage you to become Chabad Hasidim. You know why? We have enough in 770. We don't need more Chabad Hasidim. But what we do need, and what I am suggesting, if you want to see a Yireh Shemayim, if you want to see someone who really believes, go to 770 and learn and listen and see the Lubavitcher Rebbe. You'll see an individual who really believes what he says. And I think that line that he shared in Lakewood to all of these Litvaks is a very important eye-opener in this whole issue. We're not here to convert you, but you learn Chassidus because you want to believe more in the Eibishter, and you want to believe more in Torah, and you want to believe and work out your life. That's what the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov came. Everyone then has to decide what type of chassid he wants to be, what he doesn't want to be, and all that. But those that do want to be Lubavitcher Chassidim, they want to be Chabad Chassidim, then the Maamar isn't just a nice story or a nice mystical piece or a nice psychological piece. It's an all-encompassing piece that puts you in the corner, and you really have to work hard. So one of the things, this is all introduction, one of these things is this idea of iskafia. Now, iskafia means to hold yourself back. So you'll say, well, it speaks about that in Musar Sfarim. Of course it does. But in Musar Sfarim, it's coming from the Musar angle. Remember, this is Chassidus. This is Baal Shem Tov. So how do we reconcile the concept of subjugating your cravings and desires from a Hasidic perspective? Right? This is not a Litvic perspective. This is a Hasidic perspective. Baal Shem Tov and Chabad. So whether it's Baal Shem Tov or whether it's Chabad and Baal Shem Tov, it's still Chassidus. And what are we talking about? Our cravings, our taivas. So the Rebbe here, I think this Maamar gives a little insight into this question. The question is better than the answer, but there is what to work with. And the Rebbe says, are you choosing Gashmias because it's Gishmak? I love that Yiddish word. Avram, Gishmak. Gishmak means pleasurable. Or are you choosing Gashmias because this is the right thing to do? And that's what I told you yesterday. I don't know if Hillel you were on or you heard, but Yoni asked a good question. He said, what's wrong to have the chont on Shabbos, at the Kiddush, and a steak, and. So I explained to him that if you're eating it because you haven't eaten and you're hungry and you're eating it like you're eating a piece of bread, go for it. The issue that Chassidus identifies that is not godly is the seeking the pleasure just for the sake of pleasure. That in Torah and especially in Chassidus, Chabad is to be avoided and worked on. And that's a very hard avoida. Because we know when we put a piece of food that's tasty in our mouth, could you imagine? It tastes. If it doesn't taste, then we're not discussing it. We're talking about it tastes good. So how am I to eat something that's tasty and yet not get carried away where I feel my indulgence, my craving is benefiting from it, and that's what I seek. And the answer is...
Rabbi Dolphin.
Yes.
What about Shabbat Yom Tov? You're supposed to have some pleasure from those.
Wait. Let me finish my monologue here. Okay, good question. Hillel, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that one of the experiences I had when I underwent radiation was that it utterly changed the way everything tasted. Sweet tasted, bitter and bitter. So it sort of taught me how utterly subjected it is, and how It's just something can turn on and off like that. And the same thing happened in COVID for me. All of a sudden, one day, there was just no taste. It was gone. And no smell, no taste. And then it went back.
Right. So I want to continue because Avram asks a very good point, and it's part of the whole discussion. Of course we're supposed to taste. And of course Avram, Shabbos, and Yom Tov, you're supposed to have pleasure for the food. Einik Shabbos, Tainuk. But that's because of Shabbos. Not because you have a craving. And that's the difference. And that's very hard. That's what I'm telling you. But it could be done. In other words, am I tasting it because it's Shabbos? And what's the proof, Avram? The proof is that during the week, you wouldn't maybe eat it or drink it because it's not Shabbos. That's the answer. The answer is, if I'm tasting it and looking for the delight and pleasure in it because it's Shabbos, it's Shayach for Shabbos. And that's why Yosef Moker Shabbos, the famous story. Or the Hayom Yom Rishon B'Shabbos, Hayom Yom Sheni B'Shabbos. Everything is Shabbos. In other words, the perspective is it's Shabbosdik. There's an expression too, Velvel. It is a Shabbosdiker. You ever hear the expression? He is a Sabbather, a Sabbath person. All week long, he conducts himself in a Sabbath way, in a Shabbos way. What does that mean? That means that his mindset, and this is the answer to the issue, it's all in the mind. It's how the mind decides about the Gashmias. That's the point. So, yes, you should Shabbos eat a little more, but not l'shem taiva. You see, l'shem taiva, Avram, means for the sake of indulgence. No, eating Shabbos for Tainuk Shabbos does not equal eating with indulgence. It's a mistake. There's a famous idea, Shina b'Shabbos Tainuk. Sleeping on Shabbos is pleasurable. So, you walk here in Borough Park, it might be this way in Bet Shemesh, I'm not sure. At least maybe for our age, not for the young kids. But 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's still it's siesta time. Alle schlafen. What?
My son-in-law paraphrased the Mishnah, and he said, "Ha'ochel chamim b'Shabbat chayev mitah."
Oh, that's great. That's a new one. That's for the books. Whoever eats chamim is chayav mitah, is obligated to sleep. So anyway, and I remember people who would go home, Velvel, when the Rebbe would come down to the Fabrengen at 1:30 in the afternoon. 1:30. So you finish davening Shachris 12:30, you know? You had an hour and a half. So there were people who either went home, and most davened at other shuls and chronics. I'm talking about in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Well, when you go home and your wife serves you chont, or you take your own chont, you come back to the Fabrengen, and the Rebbe speaking for half an hour straight, you're going to go... And you start, and the Rebbe several times over the years made a comment. He has to look at people's faces who are sleeping. He didn't say snoring, but sleeping. So it was a very risky business. So us Bacharim and the real Chassidim, we didn't go home. We stayed. We went home later. But even if you went home, you were careful what you ate. You didn't fall asleep. The point being, going back to the Nakuda, is that we have to be very astute and aware that was men tornit tormenit and was men mog darf menit. Not everything you need you should do. So Shina b'Shabbos Tainug. So one of the Chassidish Taichin is like this, Hillel. I'll share with you the Chassidish Taich. Shina b'Shabbos Tainug. Since on Shabbos, sleeping, such a mundane thing where you're like out cold, right? You don't know where you are, becomes a pleasure and it becomes part of Shabbos. So how could you waste your time on Shabbos on sleeping? In other words, not talking about sleeping at night, sleeping during the day. In other words, If such a mundane thing as sleeping becomes holy, that shows you how holy Shabbos is. So why would you want to waste your time on Shabbos to sleep it away? And all my life I saw, but my father did rest in the afternoon, but he got up early in the morning. So everyone should find a way where they're kind of, don't indulge. I'm glad you brought it up, Avram. This is a very important point that Chabad sees. Don't take this sleeping on Shabbos and eating on Shabbos because it's tainug and indulge. No, that's not what it means. It means in the food that you're eating and the time you're spending, the quality, Moshe, here, the quality should be of tainug. The quality should be tainug. Not the quantity, the quality. So therefore, the Rebbe says over here, the Nefesh Abamis has a part of it called the Tov of the Nefesh Abamis. And the goodness of the Nefesh Abamis, it wants good. But it wants it for itself. It wants to indulge, to feel more material, more heathenistic, more etc. That is klipa. That is no good. And the Rebbe says in the middle on page 149, that's why it's called a behema. There's about 7 lines on the top. Let's go from there. A behema, its entire mindset is to pleasure its body. And regarding soul matters, it knows nothing at all. So too regarding man's character, a person seeks to constantly improve their bodily issues, matters. And he says, and therefore he worries, maybe he won't have enough of the Gashmias. And therefore, when he has more material, he makes a bracha, meaning he blesses himself. Wow, I have a boat and I have a house here and I have this and I have that. And he's very proud. Yisparu, he brags and he's proud with it. The Zekol in Yonishal Nefesh Abami says that this is the entire mindset and way of operating of the Nefesh Abami is Lias Nimshich Achar HaToiv HaGashmi VaHachumri. Here you have it, Avram, spelled out, to be drawn after the goodness of the Gashmi and the corporeality. Chomer means the corporeality. And the Nefesh Abamis impacts the person to constantly strive and go after this type of materiality and corporeality. And all of a sudden, he makes the individual be drawn after this to the point that, God forbid, it covers this mechase ala seichel anushi on the human intelligence. There are times when a person who walks in this path of seeking the pleasures, he risks his own life with thievery and robbery. Because he has to fulfill his taiva. So because he has a taiva craving, he will do everything, including thievery and robbery, to get what he wants. Until he becomes, God forbid, Rotseach, a murderer, V'goynev nefesh, and a stealer, a thief of soul. In other words, he will mislead you and deceive you and hurt you. So this is, one second, this is a situation where his taiva, his cravings and indulgences lead him astray, where human intelligence is lost. The Rebbe now says, needless to say, his cravings and his taiva destroy his godly intellect. A Yiddish, ervert on means he loses, he forfeits. dem ganzen Inyan von der Ruchnias, the entire concept of spirituality and Gettlichkeit and godliness. And it descends from level to level, ad asher nasa rachmon litzlan, till he becomes, God forbid, neufel beimkei ra. Expression. He falls into the depths, into the pits of evil. So not only does he lose at that time his seichel and nushi, but his I'm sorry, not only is the seichel elikli lost, but also seichel and nushi. So the point being, and this is just the beginning, and the Rebbe will now start explaining different details. So this is a Maamar that really, many of the Maamarim of the Rabbeim on Purim or Maamar Zochor are very what we call avodadik, very oriented towards issues like this, because when we talk about Amalek, we have to know it's not just a historical fact; it's very real and it's happening now. So these are Maamarim overall. I'm generalizing that you'll find a lot of this type of verbiage. It gets really into mitos and the ugliness when you crave and you have taivas and how it misleads you. And look what he says here. It leads you to geneva, gezela, and ritzicha. That's what he says here. And what he means is that you're either literally, for some people it's literal, even though for many people it's not literal, but it's in figurative in the sense that you're stealing from your godly, holy side. You're a Yid, we are Yidden, we have a neshama, and all of a sudden we're following the dictates of the Nefesh Abamis, stealing energy. And that happens daily. When we lose sight and track of what he says here. Look what he says here. I like this words here. He says here, Erverton, next to the last line in the paragraph. Erverton, he forfeits dem ganzen Inyan from Ruchti, is the entire concept of spirituality and Gettlichkeit and godliness. And this is a barometer. This is something is this situation bereft of spirituality and godliness? And if it is, don't go there. Don't go there. And at times it's a facade. It's very glittering. It looks really great and godly. The truth is it's not. And only a person with their mind and honesty should know the difference, because you're a thinking person. Were there times in history when we were dubbed? Absolutely. That's a Shabtai Tzvi. And the false messiahs, they misled rabbis, rabbanim, scholars who actually believed that they were the Mashiach, and then they saw that they converted. So there are times when we're fooled. The Ponzi scheme of the Nefesh Abamis fools the Nefesh Elikis. That's true, but usually you don't need to go that far. Usually we are our own self-enemies in the fact that we fall into the trap because we have a craving or greed. Greed. I have to have more and more and more and more. Why? Well, you have enough already. What do you need more for? No, but my kids, my grandkids, my friends. And then you convince them it's for the tzedakah purposes. I'll give a lot of money to tzedakah and all that. Now, there is something to be said that we need lay leaders and we need supporters of yeshivas and institutions and shuls and all, absolutely. But all done with a humility. And if you do that, then if chas v'sholem, it doesn't go one's way, you don't lose, excuse the expression, you don't lose your pants. You don't fall, you take it. And the Yidden, my father-in-law and the people, the Chassidim who came from Russia, could you imagine, Velvos for Russia, imagine before the revolution, people had businesses, people were thriving, came in, they wiped them out, nothing, the Gararis of Kremenchuk. I mean, these were people who were like the king pins, and they helped everyone, Litvaks, other Chassidim, Chernobler and Slonimer, anyone. I mean, I wrote about this in one of my books. I found some very interesting points, and I documented it. In 1919, 1920, the Geraris were out, and they went to Rostov, where the Rashab was, because it was inland. And that's it. That's it. You know, and they weren't the only ones. I just heard a Litvisher family, I forget now, that was very wealthy. Oh, yeah, of course. Rabbi Gifter of Cleveland, the Tells. His wife's grandfather was Rabbi Binyamin Beinish Dates or something. I forgot the last name. And he was a Litvisher person, and he was very wealthy. Communists came in, wiped them out, nada, go home. You have nothing to go, you have to start again. So, but did these Yidden fall apart? Did they throw away the yarmulkes? Did they give up? Not these Yidden. On the contrary, they said, a famous story of the Rebbe Marash's chassid of Shmuel Gerari. You must have heard of him. He was like a very wealthy man, a chassid of the Rebbe Marash. And then his business, was taken away and all that. And then also he lost a lot of business, whatever. So they said, Shmuel, are you still a chassid of the Rebbe? The Rebbe gave him a bracha. Are you still a chassid? And he said, only now I'm a chassid. Only now am I a real chassid. Until now, the Rebbe's brachas were fulfilled, so I was going on the Rebbe's wings, and it's all good. I'm cashing in. That doesn't show that you're... But now that the Rebbe's bracha or whatever didn't come to fruition, and I'm still his chassid, now I'm a chassid. So when times are tough, and not that we should chas v'shalom look for them, we shouldn't, but when times are tough or something doesn't go our way, and we stick to our guns and our commitments, and we're just as involved and besimcha, that's the way to break through. So, also with COVID, I heard a speaker last night, the same thing. We don't understand why the Eibishter had to do this at this time, but that's what he did. So if you take it, the bull by its horn, and you embrace it and say, so how am I going to become stronger? And what are we going to do more for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and for my family, and for my friends and my community, notwithstanding the COVID, but on the contrary, taking the COVID and making it a springboard, something greater, you've then taken the negative and transformed it. That's the answer. Not to be morbid and complain and where is God and how can you do that and what a mess, and now they want you to take a fourth shot in Eretz Yisrael, and we know all the shtuyot. It's all right, but that's the way it is. So take the situation and work with it rather than become morbid and negative. Chevra, have another shir. Talk to everyone tomorrow. Zay gesund. Shalom. Bye.